Hello. I've seen some clips from the World Economic Forum, and one of them was a graphic about the new, the Saudi Arabian idea for a city called NEOM. It's the very definition, not of a 15-minute city or a 10-minute city, but of a 5-minute city. And it's a project being built in that Mecca of freedom and equality, Saudi Arabia. It's not a completely new idea. Oh, by the way, NEOM comes from the Greek word neo, meaning new, and the M is from mustaqbal, which means future in Arabic. So, you know, it's got both languages. It's not a completely new idea, by the way. It's not totally outlandish. There's a town in Alaska called Whittier. No doubt you've heard of that. It's just basically one huge building. It was put there during the early Cold War days and then became obsolete. Well, it was for, you know, military personnel. And then it became obsolete when intercontinental ballistic missiles rather spoilt the idea of being out there on the front line. But it was boarded up, and then people started moving in, and they all were doing very similar things. First of all, there's a railway there and a ferry service, so they were working in that. And then there were other people working in tourism and the usual sort of service things like teachers to teach the kids that came with the families. The difference between Whittier and the Saudi idea is that Whittier is a community of people, not necessarily of the same race. I understand for some reason a lot of Samoans have fetched up there. But people are there because they have the same aspirations. And by definition, they are of the same social class and cultural expectations, and they're living in a place where they're all working in similar jobs, never mind, like tourism and fishing, and as I said, for the railway and the ferry. It wouldn't work so well if some of the residents, for instance, were career criminals or drug addicts or aggressively religious or political in some way or another. But unfortunately, that is the problem with most cities, isn't it? Diversity, which we should never forget is our strength. Oh, if only life could match up to the clean precision of computer graphics. I'll see if I can find a graphic of the proposed Saudi mega city, and I shall play it here. But if I don't, imagine a gleaming corridor, all mirrors on either side. Oh yeah, that's going to be great, isn't it? All those mirrors in Saudi sunlight. Well, never mind. Maybe they've thought of a way of dealing with that. But there's a building in London which was called, I think it got the nickname the walkie-talkie because it had a sort of basically curved shape, and it was concentrating the beams of the sun. Being a modern building, it was made of glass, and the sun, it was just the right angle. Obviously, you see, the architect, and you know, architects know everything. The architect built this mirrored building, possibly with the idea that we don't have much sun in England or Britain anywhere, but he was wrong. And there was a lot of sun, and it was being concentrated by that building onto the cars below and melting the plastic bits of the cars. Well, imagine this great gleaming mirrored corridor going through the Saudi Arabian desert. I think it's 100 miles long, all clean and neat according to the graphics. Just look how quickly it gets built. No slave labour or anything, you know, it just sort of comes up. And not only is that ecologically sound, we're told, well, yeah, the Arabian gazelles can go bumping into the glass as much as they like, but one of the advantages is that there's going to be fewer need for services. For instance, they specifically mention fewer shops because you have them close to where everybody lives, so you don't need a lot of shops here and there. Well, does that mean more unemployed people? I suppose more isolation, more social distancing. Well, stay home, stay safe, as they say. Have you noticed, by the way, how many people sign off messages and phone conversations now with not bye or see ya, but stay safe? I've noticed a lot of people saying that. Gives me the chills. Anyway, back to the 5-minute city. The problem, there are problems with what happens when you're all within 5 minutes of each other. You know, different people of different dispositions. And then when something untoward happens, more people are affected. For instance, and I'll go back into history, plagues, bubonic plague. Now, in Russia, Russia's feudal system persisted because there was hardly any bubonic plague there. And that's because in the 14th century, there were hardly any cities. So there was very little chance of transmission. The plagues destroyed the feudal system in Britain, in England rather, because they depopulated, I think, a third of the entire population died. It might have been more. I don't have the figures with me. Anyway, in Western Europe in the 14th century, cities were still new. Yeah, in classical times there were cities, but that was 1,000 years back in the history. And cities, it took that amount of time after the great collapse of Western civilization to recompose itself. And then bubonic plague struck. And people were living cheek by jowl. They didn't know that fleas carried the disease, for instance. Fleas were just a fact of life. And so were mice and rats. I mean, fleas were such a part of life that John Donne, the 17th century English poet, wrote a poem called The Flea, and in it he was jocularly talking to his girlfriend about the fact that the flea had sucked his blood and was now sucking hers, and so within the flea their bloods were mixed. You know, he didn't regard that as anything more than a bit of a joke. Nowadays, we know that fleas are rather dangerous in that regard, and we do something about them. Oh, we know, but we know everything now, don't we? So a city like NEOM would be just fine. There isn't anything we don't know about infection or psychological problems in a place like that. Oh, before I get back to the 5-minute city, I'll mention that I'm Granniopteryx. I'm on Twitter, Gab and Parler as @Granniopteryx, and I am also putting out my videos on YouTube, Rumble, BitChute and Minds. All the links to everything there, they're all in the description. Please help my channel. You can buy me a coffee, you can help me financially, links in the description, as I said. But one of the best things you can do is like this video and share it, and possibly check your subscription. Well, subscribe and check your subscription. YouTube tends to be a bit careless about hanging on to subscriptions. All right, yeah, that's like, share and subscribe. That's contribute. Yeah, but liking is the best. All right, well, back to the 5-minute city, I suppose. The only way you can stop cross-infection in a 100-mile long city like that, where everybody can access one part or the other quite easily, is to have barriers every so often, a bit like the emergency doors you get on submarines to stop water from coming into the wrong parts of the vessel. So if you have one section of a city that's affected perhaps by some sort of disease, or possibly by citizens upset about some new law, well, you don't need to cart these socially destructive individuals out to concentration camps like they do in China. After all, you can photograph concentration camps from space, can't you? Not a good look. No, but in a city like that, you just drop a door or a barrier or a bunch of soldiers at either end, and the problem is solved. And look, while I don't really believe that this Saudi fantasy is going to work, the tendency is definitely there. And it doesn't have to be a city like NEOM. And for Exhibit A here, I could talk about the gas stove trial balloon, which was launched by the Biden administration. Now, they're saying, oh, gas, it's fire, it's unhealthy. All fire is unhealthy. We've got to stop fire. And so we've got to stop that. Well, what happens if the electricity supply is interrupted? Won't that kill people? Because heating and cooking will instantly go. You know, when you have a gas cooker, you have an alternative when there's a power cut. Oh, by the way, that's called diversity, you know, which is our strength and something that all those woke people are hankering after. Now, I just want to give you an example. Maybe a harsh experience. In the 1970s, here in the 1970s, here in the UK, the country, the entire country was afflicted by a series of terrible strikes. It was in many ways a revolution. It was an attempt by the unions to grab political power over the government, whatever it was, Labour or Conservative. Anyway, many people had electric heating at that time, and my parents had electric heating too, but it was storage radiators, not the turn on, turn off electric heating. So when the power was cut, they still had some heat coming out of their storage heaters. And the house had people in it nearly every night, from neighbours and relatives who were round at my parents' house trying to keep warm. I learnt from that. And in my place, I have electrical central heating because that was the only option in the house. But I also have 2 wood-burning stoves, just in case, and a gas hob. And you'd have to prise that gas hob out of my cold, dead hand. All right, well, till next time. I've got to go down and cook lunch now. Why not treat yourself or a favoured relative or friend to these magnificent examples of merch? The mugs and t-shirts come in the granniopteryx design or Granbo, with a firearm or the more deadly knitting needles. Go to www.granniopteryx.com and whatever platform you're watching this on, please click like, subscribe and share.